Hey everybody, welcome. I got one question for you. What are you doing here? Who would be interested in ego or admitting that there is one? Precious few people would. That's who. So good on you. Good for you for recognizing something is off and wanting to be done with it. This is the first of 30 Facebook Live broadcasts where we get real about what's going on here so the truth can be revealed. My name is Cindy Teevens, and today I'm going to share a bit about my story from suicide to spiritual awakening. It goes from my dad's suicide to being dumped, becoming delirious with love for no reason. And through all that, what I discovered is you don't need to suffer. You may need some reason to go beyond mind, to discover what is beyond mind, but suffering itself doesn't wake you up. It's no guarantee of awakening, and there's high risk you could just die. And dying does not mean the pain ends. That's where suicidal people make a major error. They equate suicide with the end of suffering. And when they think about the end of suffering, they start to feel good. And then they think that suicide did it. But suicide didn't happen. So what actually happened? You shifted attention from what you don't want onto what you do want. You have to still be alive to access the feeling of the end of suffering. You didn't feel good because of death. You felt good alive. This is how it is with all suffering. The superficial cause of suffering is not paying attention, not discerning imagination from reality, from truth. And the root cause is not knowing who you really are, and so you suffer ideas of who you're not. So yeah, back to my story. Hey, welcome Jerry, welcome Susie. Well, Jerry will be back, I'm sure. Glad you could make it on short notice. Susie, you're muted. I'm going to unmute you. There you go. We can hear you, I think.
Hi. Yeah, can you?
Yeah. There she is.
We're live.
So, back to my story. For those of you who missed part of this because it wasn't broadcasting on Facebook, we're going to have a replay on that shortly after we're done here. So you can get the bit of introduction. But basically, my story is one of suffering, suicide actually, from suicide to spiritual awakening. And it goes from my dad's suicide to being dumped to becoming delirious with love for no reason. So what happened? My father became so stressed and depressed that he died by suicide. And that started me on a quest to find an end to suffering for myself, for him, for everyone. And I did a lot of research, a lot of looking at different religions, different spiritual ideas. And it was really in the middle of my own intense suffering that I had a breakthrough. And it was being dumped, common story. Everybody's probably experienced it. But the suffering was, not to me then, but to me now, completely not in alignment with what happened. It was suffering for the sake of suffering. But then I discovered love and joy for the sake of love and joy, which is also intense. And it happened in an instant. When I would go from intense suffering into love and joy and peace and pleasure and bliss. And nothing outside me had changed, absolutely nothing. This blew my mind because we have been raised with a happiness lie that says things, people, or events make us happy or unhappy. And I discovered that's not true. That's not what's going on here. And I went around in love, joy, peace, bliss for months and months. And it was just building. It was like there's no end to it. It got better and better and better. And I began to give myself to it, meaning nothing else mattered. only this, yet this wasn't caused by anything. So I wasn't pursuing anything or anyone, and I wasn't trying to prevent anything or anyone. And an equanimity settled in. An equanimity meaning I had no more interest in worldly pursuits. That doesn't mean I didn't eat, I didn't sleep, I didn't work. I did. In fact, I was free to do these things, unfettered by the mind that is usually, terrorizing us. I just lost the idea that anything out there could give me anything greater than what I already have. And so that grasping stopped. It was only one thing left that I wanted to know. What's going on here? Because there's a mystery, right? And the mystery is everything other than you. You think you know yourself. And so now you want to know what's not yourself. What's not yourself isn't it the whole universe? Isn't it everything else? And you don't understand how you came here, what you're here for, what happens after you leave here. But it's all hinging on one thing. Do you know what it is? It all hinges on you. This idea of you as other than everything else. So that everything, when you draw a line and say, this is me, everything else becomes not me. It has to. And so everything else becomes foreign. And everything else is much bigger because your idea of you is pretty itty bitty. And that's what we call ego. It's not a bad thought in your mind. That's not what ego is. It's the idea of your itty bitty limited separate self. And it is just an idea. Nothing more. This can be discovered. That it doesn't matter how good your idea is of yourself or how bad your idea is of yourself, it's still not you. Still not you. And therefore, you can be free of it. And therefore, 20, 30, 40 years of baggage can fall away in one fell swoop. The not you never existed and doesn't exist now. That's what this message is about. And that's what the ego workshop that we're putting together to help you sift out what is the not you so that you can discover the you is all about. So the ego workshop is coming September 19th. If you haven't joined it, you can go to egoworkshop.com and you'll get these series of videos free. All about ego. Until then, we're going to be giving you a Facebook a day, if we can at all pull this off, a Facebook Live video a day. That's what we're working at here, Rebecca and Kai and myself, to bring you more and more and more about ego, which means you become less and less. But at the same time, the paradox is when you become less and less, you get more and more. You might be familiar with a quote that goes something like, what does it gain you if you gain the world and lose your soul? So this is the reverse. I'm going to let go of the world. Reverse what has happened so that you return to your natural self. Because this little idea of yourself is unnatural. And that's why it feels bad. It feels tiny. It feels congested, limited. Because it's not who you are. And everybody knows that on some level. That's why you feel constricted and bad. Who you are is immensely, vastly far and gone beyond this little idea of you. So I welcome the conversation because the conversation is where the limits get dropped, is where realization can happen. when the false goes. It's sort of like mistaking a rope as a snake. And until you see it, it's not a snake. You won't see it as the rope that it is. This is the analogy I come to again and again and again. It's the best one I've found so far. What is ego? It's a case of mistaken identity. It's taking yourself to be something you're not. So I invite you to join us in the egoworkshop.com, because this conversation is going to go on Facebook Live, and then it's going to shift to the workshop. So join us there. And I'm going to open up to our panelists to see if anybody has questions, comments, and anything I've just said. I'm going to actually unmute our guests, Jerry and Susie. Welcome.
Hi.
Hey.
Hey there.
I know
Go ahead,
you've heard
Cindy.
some of this stuff.
Yeah, it's good to get. It's good. Repetition is good for me, and once I hear it again, and especially when I hear it from somebody else, it tends to land more quickly and effortlessly than in the past.
More naturally.
So,
that
more naturally.
Sounds like.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, more naturally.
Nice.
And I know. Any rate, that's I'm in Maui right now.
Oh,
and,
wow! Thanks for joining us. Glad you could make it.
Yeah. No, it's all good. It's all good. It's kind of funny. I wonder if can somebody be addicted to like I was asked to go hiking this morning, up in here, which is just beautiful, and we're 3 hours behind Pacific time, so we're 6 hours behind East Coast time.
Oh wow, this is like 6:30 your time.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. But I'm still on Pacific time. But at any rate, I'm finding myself, I think that's all I really want to do is you've heard the term spirit junkie.
Not put that way before. That's a new one.
Yeah. I stole that from Gabby Bernstein. I don't know if you guys know her, but anyway, she's another person I'd like to listen to. Any rate, I don't know, Cindy. I don't know. When you had your awakening, you got in touch with your natural self, got in touch with your unlimited self. I just have this pull. I just can't get enough. I just really, really enjoy. I guess this is what I'd rather be doing.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I don't know. It just I gave up hiking.
Wow.
I don't know. Is that? Do you find that you can be pulled too far?
The more time you give this inquiry, the better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I was pulled. It was like a magnet, and I was pulled, a very strong pull, to be alone, to go out into the woods alone, to be still. Even that can happen, and don't worry about it. It's not like it's going to be forever. But when it's doing its work, it's doing its work. Let it do its work. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, not at all. Absolutely.
I was just hoping I wasn't substituting one addiction for another.
I don't know that I would call you addicted, and I wouldn't, because I know you quite well. But it's a kind of addiction, especially if you fall in love with love. It's an addiction, but it's not, because an addiction is to something that you can run out of, usually, a substance of some sort. And when you run out of it, now you're in trouble, and you'll do crazy things to get it, and it wrecks your life, and it, distorts your mind and all of that. This doesn't happen here. You can't run out of it, and if you fall in love with love or reality, you can't run out of it. It's just more of it. I remember when I was telling Muji what happened, and I was like, I feel like there's something more. And he's like, yeah, more of the same. I'm like, yeah, that's what it's been, more of the same. and yeah, which is wonderful. It's not more the same like you've been eating chicken all week and you're kind of sick of chicken. No, it's like
Yeah.
it's like you never get tired of it, you know. You never, and but then, you know, there just come a point when you have gone beyond mind. What does that mean? It really means when you recognize who you really are, that there's no you pursuing it anymore. It's just what is, and it's wonderful whatever you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Up until realization, there's like you pursuing, and I have to find, and I have to figure this out, right? And then a really amazing thing happens to you. It's amazing to the you, is that at some point you are no longer pursuing, you're being pursued. And this is a changeover of power. You actually dissolve, you disappear. And that reveals.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. So I say pursue it all, whether you fall in love with love or you become a reality lover, which is what we encourage people in our program to do, to use reality to disprove what mind has to say about something, so to free yourself from mind. Or you'll fall in love with God, which is, you know, God is really another word for what you call not me, something other than you, the mystery. And that's fine too. Whatever you fall in love with or become obsessed with, give yourself to it. This is surrender. Fully, right? It's only when the idea comes up, well, should I be doing this? Am I doing this a little bit too much? Is this a little bit crazy? Yeah. Check, do your reality check. Who is the I? Is this a movie in the mind playing? We talk a lot about the movie in the mind because it's huge. Most people don't realize they are living the movie in the mind like it's reality. Like it is what is, like it is what is going on. It's only thoughts and thinking and movie and pictures and images going on in the mind. It's not the totality of reality that is going on. And when you become absorbed and obsessed with the movie in the mind, you lose reality. You lose the totality.
Yeah.
You can't actually lose it. It's still here, but you're no longer aware of it. Temporarily. It can't be permanent because it's not real. You will always wake up out of it. Something will wake you up out of it. The pain will wake you up out of it. In my case, one time a cat came and licked my nose. Woke me up out of it. This is what's going on. Here's a cat. Rough nose. Rough tongue. Rough nose now too. So the world is always trying to wake you up out of it. Pain is your friend, is trying to wake you up out of it. Are we using it that way? Or are we using it to believe the movie in the mind and go deeper in? You know, oh, that means he really did do that to me. I've got to go deal with that so he never does it again. Just because it hurts so bad. You believe it. The movie is real and true. But what's hurting is the movie. When I was a kid, I never got these scary movies, you know. I never got why people would want to go in and be scared out of their mind. Like that to me was just no fun. And I guess that bode well for me in terms of when you start to realize you got a terror movie playing in your mind, you might want to withdraw. Does that help? Yeah,
it does. Thank you. I love the fact that it can't. I got an aha moment when you said it's not like a substance addiction. It just never runs out.
That's right. Yeah.
It just never runs out.
It never runs out.
Yeah, love that. Love that. That kind of landed.
The obsession is bringing you to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Bringing you to the end of the obsession. It doesn't know that. You don't know that. But that's, So follow it. Yeah, absolutely.
So Cindy, what's your thought on, do we live in a dualistic world or a non-dualistic world? But
okay. I would like to answer your question, but I'd like to hear more from you on that. I would like to say one other thing, though, regarding your other question. I have seen people who will travel miles to go to see some guru or something because they get a good feeling when they're sitting there in front of them. And this could be a kind of an addiction, especially if you have to travel to go. You might spend thousands. You'll go there, you get a good feeling, you'll sit there for a little while, right? And then you go home again and poof, right? You've lost it, you've dropped. And then you get this idea you have to be in their presence. You know, it's much better to go to a teacher who's going to chop your head off, who's going to make you feel uncomfortable, to help you get rid of all that trash. So that could be a form of, I guess you could call it a spiritual addiction. You don't really want to give up yourself. You just want, you know, the red pill from someone else. You want someone else to awaken you. You want someone else to, you know, you think that feeling good is it. Feeling good is not it.
Well, you know,
feeling good is a byproduct. It's not the trigger. It's not the cause. It's not it.
Well, do you think most people, I guess I want to speak for myself here. I don't know if I necessarily want to be awakened. I just want my life to be better. I want to feel better. I don't know if I necessarily want to be awakened.
And that's what most people, that's, you know, if most people were honest, I think that's where they're coming from. I didn't want to be awake. I didn't have that. In fact, I had a aversion to it because I had read a book called After the Ecstasy, the Laundry, and it freaked me out. So this is a book that talks about people who have these awakening experiences, and then they go through like 6, 9, 12 months of the so-called dark night and hell. And I'm like, oh, wait, whoa, stop everything here. My life's not that bad. I don't want to go there. I don't need this thing called, you know, I'm not interested. First I was interested. Whoa, it sounds good. It's like some kind of, you know, conscious shift that is just, I want to have that. And then I read this and I was like, no, thank you. It's not worth it. So I was suffering and I wanted to not suffer, which is what everybody does. Mm-hmm. But what happened was I fell in love with love itself, and that blew me, who I thought I was, out of the water. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It just consumed me, the me that I thought I was. So when you have that kind of love, joy, bliss experience, this is what happens to a lot of people. we have clients, members in our groups right now who are experiencing this. And I've heard many times them say, you know what? I don't care about awakening. This is great. You know? Mm-hmm. But have you taken it far enough? Or are you just going to sit there feeling good? Like for me, it was the last thing I wanted in the world was to get my business running so that I wasn't starving every month and didn't know where the next rent payment was going to come from. And I didn't want to go work flipping burgers part-time. I didn't want to. And that day in the middle of the woods, when there was that explosion of love at the chest, it knocked me on my knees crying. And I looked up at the trees and saw themselves as myself, which is still the case. It blew the me out of the water. But prior to that, I had said, this is so good. I don't care what I do for my career anymore. As long as I have this, this is more important than anything. This is actually more important than me. So I said, do with me what you want. Complete surrender. Do with me what you want. I don't care. Giving up everything you think you need, want, because it's all you. It all comes back to you again. All hooks on you. And you are your needs and your wants. That's what you believe. You don't realize it, but you're acting like your needs, and that's what you are. And this false you arises inseparably from a need and a want that your special self wants. And so people are really willing to give up the bad. I just want to have the good. I'm really willing to give up the bad. I just want to have only the good. You could give up that too. Mm-hmm. Right. Wanting it. I was living it. There was nothing for me to give up but myself, my wanting, my demands. I've had, someone once said, I surrendered to God last night. They were in such severe pain. They were very ill. They said, I surrendered to God. I said, you can take me. They said, you can and they woke up the next morning and they're still alive. I said, I don't understand. I surrendered. Why didn't God take me? You didn't surrender. You're ordering God around. You're telling God when you should live and die. still the idea of you. Surrender is surrender yourself, your will, which doesn't exist anyway. Give it up. And by doing so, you give up your little self, your false self, and you gain eternity. Not that you didn't already have it, but now you recognize it. You realize it. That's why it's called self-realization. In fact, we had this conversation in the group. We have a group called Ego Workshop in Facebook. Even when mine barks at you like that, you ignore it. It doesn't matter what it says, how loud it says, how long it goes. You watch. You just wait and watch and ignore and see what happens. So, yeah, this conversation we had in, it was someone said, but I like that voice. It comforts me. And it really triggered for me sort of an explanation of what the real problem is here. What's the problem here? The problem is we sometimes like and we sometimes hate that voice, don't we? Okay. This will stop in a moment. We sometimes like and we sometimes hate that voice. Because we think it's us, and so we like it, and when it's good, and we don't want to lose it. And then we think, if the idea of losing it, giving up my idea of myself, which is really the voice in our head, we think we'll lose our very existence. But we hate it when that voice is ugly. That's a problem, because that voice comes with both the good and the bad. You can't just have one without the other. It's the voice. It's one. So we're tortured. But when you know you're not the voice, then it no longer matters what the voice says. Does this strike home? Instead of trying to improve the voice that you call me, which is, you can do it. You can have a nicer ego rather than an uglier ego, but it won't be nice 100% of the time. It's still a limited idea of myself, a tiny little being who's now threatened by everything else in the world. So it isn't going to be the nice little you want yourself to be. So rather than trying to fight this battle, you can't win. You need to make mind your friend. How do you do that? Realize you're not it. You're not that. Doesn't matter what it says, you're not that. Step out of the movie in the mind. You're not the character in the movie in the mind. Is that making sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It can be. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna piggyback on what you're talking about. The voice in the head when it makes you feel good. And for me, I've been noticing it makes me feel good when I go in fantasy.
Mm-hmm. That's one way. And that's an addiction.
Yeah. And I look at it, I go, gosh, yuck. And I can step back and catch it. And it just, it triggers when I'm watching this movie on Netflix. It's a documentary on football in the South. And that's a whole, even though I live in the United States, football, I never got it. you know, I mean, I would never, you know, and here I'm doing it. I'm in the fantasy. I'm telling myself, oh, well, I would never ever um, uh, groom my son to, you know, for football. It was the intellect that really matters, you know. And here I'm
Mm.
judging myself. It just, I got into this stupid fantasy how I think those moms are wrong when they're grooming their sons for the body and for football. And I'm glad I did this for my son. I groomed him for the intellect. And I'm thinking, God, what am I doing here? This is insane. And my goal in watching this is to embrace another part of the country's culture. That's just something, and to see the good in that, and just open my. But then I just found myself into fantasy. It was all ego. That my way is thinking of bringing up.
But this is exactly what I'm
Yeah.
pointing to. Whether
Mhm.
football is bad or good is all movie in the mind.
Mhm.
You just swap one story for another. And I would ask, you say, I got into a stupid fantasy. Was it you?
No.
You answered that very quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, you just presented now that you did, that you got into stupid fantasy. And then you got into, well, no, it's culture. I'm going to do this. Is it you either way?
Yeah. No, that's true. Yeah.
Is that who and what you are? This is not checked. And because it's not checked, you're engaging in the movie in the mind. You're engaging in a story about you and society and your son and others. Self and others rampaging here.
Mhm.
Thoughts can be ideas, and that's really where their use is. We're not throwing thought out. You know, it has its place, but not as you. Thought is not intelligence itself. It's just thought. And one thought triggers after another, after another, after another. And everybody has seen this, the insanity of thought, where it'll take you places that, like, I wouldn't have gone there willingly. I wouldn't have chosen it. Right?
Mhm.
That's because it's not intelligence and you didn't choose it. Okay.
That's good. Thought is not intelligence.
No. It's just a function. It's a bodily function, a body-mind function. You're the intelligence. Okay. Let's see. We have some attendees. Janet, Katrin, thanks. Hey, Sage, thanks for coming. If you guys have any questions, just type them in the Q&A box down below. And you can type them on screen, or if you actually want to come on live, because this has been a great call and I don't mind extending it a little bit. We could invite somebody else on. If you have a question or a comment on the topic, our favorite topic, ego, which doesn't exist, only appears to exist. So yeah, you can actually raise your hand if you want. There's a button there you can press to raise your hand if you want to talk with me live. And if not, feel free to type in the Q&A box. Otherwise, if we don't get any conversation, we'll end it for today, and we'll be back on tomorrow then with a new topic. Again, ego, but a new topic around ego. As you can see, it's very, has a lot of depth, this topic conversation. Okay. Just give it another minute. Anybody who's currently on panel?
Well, Cindy, can you hear me?
Yeah, Susie.
Yeah, so I would just it's the same thing you've been saying, but I think when we were talking about obsession and being a spiritual seeker, there are definitions of that, as you mentioned. But I think for me as well, like Jerry was saying and you said, there is that, it's a pull rather than an obsession. It's a different kind of feeling, and it's also different. And I've recognized that for myself. In fact, just this weekend, how I am shifting the way it's my perception of seeing things. So as I'm seeing things differently, it is feels different.
Yes.
It's different to people around us. My husband yesterday was concerned because he thought I was sad. But the truth is, I was, and I really couldn't even have the conversation, but I was really staying as present and not resisting, really noticing that what the thoughts were and when I wanted to resist. It was a very different experience. And it wasn't even, yesterday I couldn't have described it. This morning I could, but it was after, but it was a different experience of being a being.
Would you say it's sort of like being in a holding mode where you're not grabbing onto something and identifying, you're just holding, you're feeling the energy that you could go, that you used to do that there might be an interest or desire to that, but you just hold.
Exactly. That's what it was. And that I didn't resist and I didn't grab.
There you go.
I just was with it. It was a bit uncomfortable because it was odd for me.
Yes.
It was outside of that program.
The normal response.
My normal program.
Yeah.
And so it was odd in that way. The voice, the movie in the mind, or the voice, the thought had all my conditioning. So it was coming up, you're lazy, you're this, you're that. And I just let it be. I didn't try to resist it. I just was with it. So
and when people have seen you largely either happy-go-lucky kind of thing or angry or some kind of dichotomy, to be just still, they may interpret it as being sad.
Exactly. So, but I look back in the moment, like I said, it was odd, but now looking back just to yesterday, I realized it was what it was, and I want more of that.
You're at the cusp of the changeover of power, where instead of identifying, going with the character in the movie, you don't do it.
Yeah.
You just don't do it. Somebody the other day, said to me that I'd said, wow, you had an insight. That was great. And they said, yeah, you should see what I'm writing now. Like, they haven't posted yet, but you should see what I'm writing now. And I said, well, don't, just stop. And they were like, oh, never thought of that. And then like a tear came. Yeah, I'm free. I don't have to. I can just stop. There's this idea we have to do this, or we have to be like a little angel. Well, no, you can just do nothing. You're free. And what you said, the key word there a while ago is being, a spiritual seeker, and you define yourself. That could be another identity. What I urge is no identity. Don't cling to anything. And I had the spiritual seeker identity. And what is that? That's in opposition to the finder, isn't it?
Yeah.
And as long as we say I'm a spiritual seeker, you're therefore not a finder, right?
Right.
And sort of like the sign I saw in Europe one time that said, free beer tomorrow. Oh. I thought about, oh man, that ain't never gonna happen, right? Yeah. So the same thing, spiritual seeker. Wow. If you identify as a spiritual seeker, that's forever. Like, there's no finding in there at all. And that moment of what I call, you become irrationally impatient. I want to know now. I want to know the truth now. I'm not waiting anymore. And you don't have to know how that's going to happen. You just have to be irrationally impatient. So now you're giving up the future. You totally just like you give up touching any of those thoughts, which are probably all past and future based. Of course, the movie in the mind generally is. Movie in the mind comes from the brain, the storage, the memories that have been stored there. So right there, just the fact that that's where it comes from, it's not creative. It's not creativity in the moment, which the moment is completely open and creative. But the movie in the mind is coming from memories. It's all storage stuff that's of the past. And so there's no creativity there. You just spin your wheels over and over on the same thing. So being irrationally impatient and like, nope, had enough. Thank you very much. I want to know now. This has to happen. Because if you keep saying, I'm a spiritual seeker, it's who I am, you'll keep seeking. You're no thought. It doesn't matter what thought comes up, how good it sounds. Even a spiritual seeker is a limit. Huge one, actually. And I know you're not that. And I know each and every one of you are utterly unlimited. And that's what this is all about, because these conversations are important. You come forward, you bring your limitations, and we look at them in the light of truth. And you can see and recognize, oh, yeah. And you can discard it.
Well, I definitely like spiritual finder better. If there has to be a label.
There has to be a label. What I always say is, if you have to label somebody or yourself, just, use the word unlimited.
Good.
It's the most slippery label you could possibly choose. All right. Any questions, comments from our attendees? We haven't got any since, so I figure there isn't any. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We just got one now. Look at that. Sage says, thanks for these daily gatherings. You're very welcome. Thank you for joining us. And the replay will be available. And we are working on making these shorter. So, it's good to be short too, so that powerful but short and we don't overwhelm. But I tell you, if we get good questions, I have a hard time not answering. The dogs are coming. Gotta go.
Right. Who's the eye? Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you. See you next time.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.